from Discourses. This is page 248. The entire advance from the very beginning consists in gradually curtailing and transcending the working of the individual mind. Even when the mind thinks in its own terms, it does not attain knowledge and realization of the infinite because it becomes its own veil between thought and truth. So the mind becomes its own veil between thought and truth. Though the mind may be unencumbered by life in the body state or the energy state, it is still limited by separative consciousness. So here Bob is talking about when we pass on, we can leave our body and our energy state, but we carry our mental body with us through each embodiment. The mental body incarnates with us. So he's saying even when we're unencumbered by life in the body state or the energy state, it is still limited by separative consciousness, which is a great reason to work on our thoughts, because we're going to have to take our mind with us, and we might as well, slow it down and purify it. So then Baba goes on to say it might be compared to a mirror that is covered with dust. The mind has therefore to be completely merged and dissolved in the infinite before it is possible to experience the God state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Form is solidified energy. Energy is an expression of mind. Mind is the covered mirror of eternity. I love that. Mind is the covered mirror of eternity, and eternity is truth that has thrown off the mask of mind. Eternity is truth that has thrown off the mask of mind. To discard the limiting mind is no easy thing. The chief difficulty is that the mind has to be annihilated through the mind itself. Intense longing for union with the infinite reality, as well as infinite patience, are indispensable in the process of transcending the mind. Isn't that amazing? I'm just blown away by Baba.
Anne, could you read that last sentence again, please?
Sure. Well, I'll read the last two sentences.
Okay.
The chief difficulty is that the mind has to be annihilated through the mind itself. And what I have found from doing this work for many years now is that I notice that my mind isn't as active as it used to be. And so I think that you can progressively slow down your mind. And then hopefully Baba will just come and annihilate it at some point. And then he says, intense longing for union with the infinite reality, as well as infinite patience, are indispensable in the process of transcending the mind. So what comes up for me in this one is the real importance of learning to disidentify from our thoughts. I've said it several times. That's actually the most important thing that we're doing here. We're learning to disidentify from our thoughts. People generally think they are their thoughts. There's no separation. But when you can start learning to witness your thoughts and questioning them, then everything starts slowing down, and there's a more spacious awareness that arises. So does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share from that quote of Baba? Okay.
Well, I did have a life after life experience, and where I died, and it was because I bought this radiator that was coated with a chemical, and they turned on the steam heat, and it's like very toxic. Anyway, I had to go. I was rushed to the emergency room, and I died on the operating table. And I saw Baba in a long white sadra as I floated out of my body, and he said, "You're not on the list." He was carrying a scroll, and he pushed me back through the tunnel, and then brought me back to life. So, yeah.
What an incredible experience. thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah.
It's also really funny. You just weren't on the list.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't on the list. He had a scroll.
Yeah.
On the list.
And
Like,
he
oh,
probably,
good morning.
yeah. And don't you think Baba appears to each one as we need him to? And, you know, because you're an actor and you do comedy, right?
I do everything, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, his sense of humor would seem to be a good appeal to you.
Yeah, it was just very relaxing. I was just floating out of my body.
I mean, it's all in his hands, you know. It's like we don't even have to worry about when we're going to go. We're just going to go when it's time to go, and it's just going to be, you know, putting on another body, another cloak, and we're going to take the mental body with us that we have, which inspires me to keep trying to refine it and purify it. Anybody else have anything they would like to share?
Sometimes I feel like I'd like to be out of the body now.
Oh, yeah. I feel that way. I mean, my body's getting old and I have aches and pains, and sometimes I'm just like, oh, it's just kind of extra baggage, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to live a long time. So
It's not because of that for me. It's just that the situation in the country and the virus and the riots. And
well, the good thing is, think of all the sanskaras that are being taken. I mean, Baba stirs the pot just to help us get rid of all of our sanskaras, and especially through these difficult times, you know, notice stressful thoughts and then just take them to inquiry, because you really do have the tools now. And there's that place inside of us that is perfect peace. And, you know, we can find it. I mean, I did not feel very well today, and I decided to lay down for a while, and it was the best thing I could have done, because I was able to just relax and notice that it felt like a heavy energy. And instead of resisting it, I just relaxed. And then I felt like, okay, this is all good, I'm fine. But, you know, pushing against that energy and resisting it and fighting it just makes us more worn out than ever.
one thing I've been doing in this quarantine is spoiling myself by having gourmet dinners delivered.
Oh, I love that.
My top chefs.
You're really nurturing yourself. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. Definitely. Okay, so today we're going to go back to what we worked on earlier, just for 1 week, which is seeking love, approval, and appreciation. And I was reviewing all the material I have, and this was what I felt was what we should come back to and spend. We just spent a month on accepting the gift of criticism, and now we're going to spend a month on seeking love, and how that is such a cause of our suffering, looking for love outside of ourselves. And of course, we know Baba has told us in so many ways, Baba lives in our hearts, and he wants to live more and more in our heart. And by looking for love outside of ourselves, we neglect him. And so, and of course, he does manifest all throughout creation. And yet I have found it to be true that whenever I pin my hopes on external love, I'll always be disappointed, because just being human, it's just how it works. And I'm going to be sharing something with you about that on projections. And so if anybody has something they'd like to say before I do this reading from that Sufi Jungian book, Catching the Thread, please feel free. Okay. So, as you know, I recognize that the inquiry method of Byron Katie is absolutely explained by Jungian psychology. You know, Baba says, when the unconscious becomes fully conscious, then we realize God. The unconscious has to become fully conscious. And then Carl Jung said that the unconscious can only become conscious by projecting. So we actually project the whole world, and we get to see our good stuff and we get to see our shadow stuff. And instead of believing that something outside of us needs to change, we can look within. Now, of course, we know that the COVID happened and the rioting is happening, and those are objective, consensual reality situations in the world. But at the highest level of reality, nothing is happening. Nothing has ever happened and nothing ever will happen. And we're here to work our way out of the illusion. And, you know, Baba says Maya is the necessary medium for God realization. And oftentimes we humans really work harder when the situation is challenging. So if any good can come out of these challenging times, it's that we can focus more and more on finding Baba in our hearts and living more and more for him and for him and others too. So this is from page 66 through 68 of it's the chapter, The Transformation of the Shadow, that I've been reading from. So he talks about the prima materia, and that's what's rejected and considered waste. So it's like the basic material that we don't want to look at in ourselves. And psychologically, the prima materia is the shadow, the undifferentiated contents of the unconscious that form the basis of the opus, which is our inner work, and is most often experienced in the form of projections or unexpected moods or reactions. For in such forms, unconscious feelings express themselves. The unconscious spills over into our conscious life. The alchemical process is concerned with the differentiation and integration of the unconscious. And therefore, this process cannot begin without the individual's getting hold of the mercurial contents of his psyche. Whenever one finds oneself reacting with more feeling or emotion than is justified by the objective situation, then something has, quote, come up from the unconscious. And there is an opportunity to get hold of that prima materia. It is therefore important to try to differentiate between what belongs to the external situation and is an appropriate response, and what is primarily a reaction, something belonging to one's own unconscious patterns and projections, which have been triggered by the external situation. And because such unconscious material is not valued by the conscious mind and is often considered humiliating, it is left lying around in the dusty corners of our lives in unpleasant or humiliating incidents where it can be found by the simple act of, quote, sweeping. The opus commences with our looking into those dusty corners and valuing what is found there, however disagreeable it may appear. The very act of taking notice of one's moods or reactions and trying to understand their source allows consciousness to begin to grasp and thus work with the unconscious. For most people today, the alchemical workshop is in the field of personal relationships. While the alchemists projected their unconscious into the mysterious processes of chemistry, we project our psychic contents most easily onto our relationships. Personal relationships form the groundwork for most psychological inner work, for it is here that we appear to have least conscious control of ourselves, and where the unconscious finds the greatest room for expression. In fact, many personal relationships are wrecked by the explosions of the unconscious. Within our society, the nuclear family and the importance attached to romantic love have placed immense pressure on personal relationships, with the result that they are often the battleground of the unconscious. Yet this battleground can become a workshop for the transmutation of the human being. For it is in the feelings we project onto our relationships that we have the most direct access to the unconscious. And I'm just reminded, just yesterday, I got really crabby with my husband because he was going to stain our deck, and he was going to do it early in the morning before it got hot, and he just kept putting it off. And I was nagging him, and I actually then caught myself and witnessed what's really running inside of me. You know, it's just like in this book, what I read, it's not really appropriate to what's happening in the world, in the objective world. You know, he's perfectly, you know, if he wants to work in the hot sun, I shouldn't worry about it. And so I thought about it, and I thought, you know, that it's fear of something going wrong. I know I have a tendency to want to control things, and it's something I've really worked at and I've let go of a lot, but it's still, the vestiges are there, and it comes right out of my unconscious, just wanting things to be, you know, a certain way, wanting to have a certain order. If he said he was going to do it early, then he should do it early. So does anybody else have any observations about what I just read?
Well, for me, it's getting mad at inanimate objects that fall on the floor and calling them four-letter words. I mean, it just like flies out of my mouth, and it's like, you know, a bagel will fall on the floor, and I'm like, you motherfucker. And I just like, where did that come from? It's a bagel that fell on the floor. Why are you getting so upset?
Well, I can totally relate. Yeah, I bet other people here can too. It's just like the unconscious, you know. And I've got some more excerpts to read in future classes that really help us pinpoint what that is, and how we really do get to work with it, and that we also want to keep our instincts intact. So but we can refine that instinctual energy, and just by becoming more conscious of these things is really helpful.
Can you say where you read that from, that last part, please?
Yes, this is from Catching the Thread. It's Llewellyn Von Lee's.
Oh, I thought it was Baba.
No, and it's page 66 to 68. The reason I like this man, Von Lee, is because he's a real Sufi, like in the truest sense of the word. And I can tell he's already in the inner realm. Like, he has worked through so much. And the book, the subtitle is Sufism, Dream Work, and Jungian Psychology. So he explains the inner path through those different modalities. And I always remember how Baba said, and I've read the quote where Baba says in the discourses that the day will come when people will come forth to shed more light on these inner processes that are really going to help us. And I do truly feel that day has come. There are many pure souls who are sharing ways to work with our shadow and transform it in a very, you know, I mean, this guy is completely spiritually attuned in my experience.
And what's his name again?
His name is Llewellyn, that's his first name, but Von Lee, VAUGHAN-LEE. Okay. And I've read several of his books, and I just get inspired because, you know, my work is in the psychological realm, so that's where I'm naturally gravitate to. But I love bringing Baba's words into all of this, and you know, I'm hoping someday to be able to put it all together in written form so that anybody can read it, because my sense is that could be really helpful. So, seeking love, approval, and appreciation. And so we talked about this before. Whenever we leave ourselves, we look outside of ourselves to be completed in another person, whether it's our partner, our children, our friends, you know, whoever it is. It's always the cause of suffering. Like the honeymoon comes to an end because it's all about projections. We can project all of our positive things onto our family and friends. But the shadow has to have its say also. And one of the things that Vani talks about is how romantic love, as we know it in the West, is a fairly recent historical phenomenon. It started in the 11th century, I believe, with the Arthurian period. And he talks about arranged marriages, and he says, you know, there's less projection, you know, when you don't have this total projection of romantic love. And he also says that when you do fall in love, which is really valuable, then the hard work is, you know, is when the projection starts coming back and you start seeing your partner's shadow, to love that person as a human being. And of course, with Baba, we know that that's the way for us to go. We love Baba, and we love Baba in all of those people in our life. And we don't look to them for fulfilling our needs. And especially for us who love Baba, we, you know, we're very fortunate that way. So what I'd like to do this week is start a group inquiry, Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. And if you have pencil and paper, you can just write this statement down, because this is going to be the #1 statement that we're going to work on today. So I am upset with them. I'm saying them because I'm going to have you find the he or she that you're going to work on for the next month. I am upset with them, or angry, or saddened, whatever the main emotion is, because they don't love me enough. So write down, they don't love me enough. And I want you to find that situation and trust the image that arises. It doesn't matter who it is. It can be a work partner, it can be a spouse, a child, a friend, an enemy.
Can it be someone who's no longer living? You said present.
Yes, absolutely. It works. I'm telling you, nobody's dead. Everybody's still alive, in or out of the body. I mean, I did the work on my parents quite a bit. And I've done the work on Baba, and, you know, he's out of the body. And of course, he's more alive than ever. So absolutely, trust whoever arises for you, and write down, he or she doesn't love me enough. But as we go through the inquiry, I'm going to say, they don't love me enough. And then you're going to stay in your situation. So I just want to give you a moment to find your situation. You were going to find the person, and then you're going to find a particular example. There has to be something that triggered you that you can refer back to. And I think I even mentioned this in the last few sessions. I actually did the work on my husband not loving me enough because he wouldn't move to Myrtle Beach. And I was resisting doing the work on it. I was just not even identifying the thought, but I carried it around feeling a little victimized for a while, sorry for myself. And then one morning when I was up really early, Baba came to me and said, he doesn't love you enough, is it true? And I went through the whole inquiry. So I'm telling you, this stuff is just, it changed everything for me. As soon as we get to release ourselves from the role of being victim, the way opens up, this vaster, spacious awareness comes up, and we find ways to give ourselves the love that we wanted from another, whatever it is we need from someone else. And this is going to be our umbrella statement for the month. They don't love me enough. And then next week, we're going to find what we want. And that's where we get to whine and tantrum. And then the next week, we're going to give them the advice. And then the fourth week, we're going to finish up with what we need them to, I need them to, whatever it is, to make to make us happy. So this is going to be a deep inquiry, and so really make sure you find one that triggers you, that you still haven't resolved. He or she doesn't love me enough. So I want to know if everybody's found their situation and their person. And if you haven't, please speak up and I'll just wait, because I need everybody to get on the train together. Okay, so it sounds like everybody's ready. So you know the drill. This is being recorded, and if you don't want to be recorded, then you don't have to share. And I love it when you do share. And we're going to go through the 4 questions of the work, and then when we get to question 3, Diantha puts up the sub-questions. And then when we do the turnarounds, she'll put that up too. So everybody just take a few gentle breaths, and it's really important to be comfortable and relaxed, and that's where you get to feel your inner being. Your inner wisdom will arise, and it's your inner wisdom that's going to give the answers, okay? And this is sometimes painful. Okay. So is it true that they don't love you enough? Is it true that they don't love you enough? And just when you're ready, it's just a yes or a no.
Say yes.
Has everybody found their answer? So now I'm going to ask you the second question. And on this one, I don't want you to answer it until you've contemplated it for a full minute. Okay? So if you said yes, then you're going to ponder this next statement. And if you said no, then you can just wait. Can you absolutely know that it's true that they don't love you enough? Just sit with it. Can you absolutely know that it's true that they don't love you enough? Please unmute yourselves and just give your yes or no.
I would say yes.
Thank you.
No.
There's never a wrong answer.
Yes.
This is deep work. Okay.
No.
So, thank you, Cliff.
No.
Thank you.
No. No.
So I don't know would be no. I can't absolutely know that. So is everyone ready? So Diantha, you can put up the sub-questions for question 3. So how do you react when you're believing the thought that they don't love you enough? What happens? Ponder that for a minute. How do you react when you're believing the thought, they don't love me enough? So let's look at the first sub-question. It's always really great to go to the emotions. That's how you react. What emotions do you feel when you're believing that thought? And just speak out if you feel like sharing.
I feel bereft. Sad.
Yes.
Angry.
Does anybody else?
Disillusioned.
Disillusioned, yeah. These are These are complex emotions, aren't they? They really are. Would anyone be willing to volunteer to go into the emotion and have me facilitate you through it in your body?
I will.
Tina?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, dear. So what is your emotion?
I feel anger.
Okay. So the first thing then we do is, you see the second sub-question, where do you feel that in your body? Where do you feel the anger? And this is, I cannot stress how important it is to learn to locate where you feel it in your body, because we're so used to repressing our negative emotions and feelings that we just get blocked and we're numb. And so this is when you can start locating where it is in your body. And then what I'm going to do with Tina, I'm going to have her do that. Did you find where it is, Tina?
Yeah, it's more like a tightness in the chest.
Okay, so Tina found it in her chest as a tightness. And I want everybody to find that emotion, that bereftness, that all of those poignant, painful, sad feelings. Because when we can sit with those feelings, we can actually release the pain. And then we become more of a clear channel for God's energy to just flow through us. We have to feel the pain, our pain and the pain of the world, but we don't have to hang on to it. But this is what makes us become more compassionate human beings. So Tina feels the anger in her chest area. So I want you to get really close and describe the sensations. You said tightness, right?
Mm-hmm.
See if you can go in even more and notice, what else do you notice in your heart area, in your chest area? Describe the tightness.
It's like a heaviness and like a burning.
Okay.
Like a fire.
Yeah. And of course, we know with Baba that that's actually a beautiful thing. When you have burning, you are burning those shadows in your heart. And the path of love is not for the faint of heart, and we all have to suffer on it. And, you know, just notice if there's burning, that you are burning those sanskaras, and that's a wonderful thing. And if you can stay with those uncomfortable sensations and emotions for 60 to 90 seconds, something else will arise, or something will shift, or perhaps another image will arise. And we've had that happen in these sessions where a childhood memory comes up, and what you have to do is jot it down, because that is going to be an important separate inquiry that you can take, you know, to a worksheet. So Tina and everyone, we're going to stay in the witness mode. Our soul is aloof from all of these goings-ons, all of these entanglements that we have with body, energy, and mind. The soul always stays aloof, and we're going to go to that place of the witness, and we're going to observe those uncomfortable sensations and emotions with compassion, and we're going to trust that we're in this process of releasing, and something will shift. So we're going to do that now for 1.5 minutes. Gentle breathing. So Tina, since you're my willing client, can you share what you notice when you witness?
Well, I have a little bit of a problem being a witness because my mind is going in a lot of different directions. I think I might be like distracted or something, but it did move down into my stomach more.
It moved where?
Into my stomach.
Okay, good to notice. Now, the mind is like wild horses, and what we're doing in self-inquiry is we're harnessing those horses. Baba says over and over again how important it is to learn to discipline our mind, control our mind. And this is one way that we can do it that's very reliable. So Tina and everyone, when you're in that 60 to 90 seconds, every time you get distracted, keep pulling it back. Willfully pull it back, because you're going to change the pattern and it will get easier. And it is hard work. And that's why Katie says it's called the work, because it's hard work. But the dividends are incomparable. And it gives you a lot of peace of mind once you learn to control. Bring it back. Bring it back. Okay? So you notice that the energy you notice something in your stomach area?
Mm-hmm.
And can you describe what it felt like there?
Well, it's the same feeling. It just moved down. It's
So it's
like
tight.
tight
Okay.
and burning and
Yeah. And so if I was working in a session, a one-on-one session, I would probably continue on with the client if they were willing and it felt like they had the energy to continue with it. And as I've said before, this is something you can do on your own. I know it really helps to do it in a group, and we will keep doing it as a group. But if you really want to move through some of this work, sit with it for just 60 to 90 seconds. You're not trying to change the energy, you're just witnessing it. And it's like, that's what that energy wants. It just wants to be acknowledged. It has a reason for being there. And oftentimes when we feel that tightness or that contraction, or even sometimes like an ache or a pain, it will diminish. Or sometimes a childhood memory will arise that we need to note down and then attend to that later. Would anybody like to share their experience before we move on? Just speak up if you'd like to share.
Well,
Hi, Lenita.
hi.
What happened for you?
Well, the first question is that I'm upset because what goes again?
Oh, the first one was they don't love me enough.
Yeah. What do I feel? Yes. Oh, that's related to my parents. You know, both of my parents.
Yes.
And I feel that in a very young age, that sense of being abandoned emotionally.
Yes.
To have any availability, emotional availability, so I feel this steering, you know, it's like a steering in my solar plexus. And I was unconscious of this for a long time, long time. And then, and that happened, you know, the same pattern of, I look for people, especially in a romantic, you know, relationship. Yes. I always look for a man who treat me the same way, you know, who make me feel that way, you know, abandoned and rejected.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And just recently, I mean, I realized I felt that, you know, with this particular person, and that. And that came back, you know, it all came back. Yes. And it feels to me like he took the scabs off my wounds so I could see, and it was bleeding and was very, very painful.
And
And
that's
every
actually why you were drawn to him.
Yeah.
We project out into the current life what our unfinished business. So and we all have unfinished business back to our childhood. So you have to find someone in your current life so that you can actually become aware of what you've repressed.
Oh yes, that's what happened to me. I became totally aware.
Yes.
And then it was very painful. And
Yes.
every time I would see him to give his back to me, because it was one of his patterns to give back to give his back to me, you know.
Yes.
And every time, even though we are not together, but any situation, I would see his back going away, you know,
Yes.
that feeling would come back immediately. Boom, you know.
Yes. So
It's
what I
up
would
in my solar plexus.
Yeah. And what we do in the work, Lenita, is separately, are you working on your parents? Is that what you're working on now?
Yeah, because that's the source.
Yes.
You know, this guy doesn't matter because he just came to help me. He's a gift, actually.
Yes.
He
Yes.
came to make this thing aware like I was never before, you know, and then I can work on it, you know.
Yes.
And Baba said it that I was seeing, this is going on since the last year, the entire year last year. Baba said that I was in a period of purification
Yes.
of myself, you know. So I was
Now,
purifying.
did you find
Hmm?
Lenita, did you find a specific situation that you're working on with your parents?
No.
It's going to be, okay. It's very helpful if you can just find one situation to refer back to, because it will help your mind concentrate. And I always tell clients, trust the image that arises. So since you're working on my parents don't love me enough, if you sit with that for a minute, you'll probably have an image or two arise, and you can pick one of those. That's going to help you go through this next month to really clear up this situation. And the deepest work we do is on father, mother. That is the core work. Byron Katie always says, if you want to get the job done, do the work on father, mother. Because the people in our current life reflect whatever, because as children, we don't have the skills and the awareness of how to take care of ourselves. We look to our parents as God. We all do. It's human nature. And we come to the place at some point where we actually can let our parents off the hook because they're just human. And then we reparent ourselves. We give ourselves what our parents couldn't give us because they just can't. They can't do it. You know, we all have a different story, but ultimately it's the same story. And the beauty of this whole evolutionary process is that it forces us to hang on to Baba's Daman with both hands, because ultimately no human being is ever going to give us what we need. But we can find a lot of healing in reparenting ourselves. And then we can attract your relationships too.
I was using my father, and he was physically abusive.
Yes.
And he threw things at me, and he hit me, and he did all kinds of bad things.
Yes. Yes. And I remember and I might have said this before, because I said we don't take statements of fact to inquiry. So the example is, I'm upset with my father because he hit me. But you can't take a statement of fact to inquiry. So then we say, and that means, and then in this situation, it meant he doesn't love me. And
Right.
you will ultimately come to the place where you will have nothing but compassion for your father, because we can just never know what all the hells we've gone through. Everybody's gone through so many challenges, and we just let the parent off the hook and give ourselves what we wanted the parent to give us. And it's very deep work. It's painful work. And, you know, many, many tears are shed along the way. And that is a very healing thing. This is you know, we talk about evolution and involution, and I really see this process as the unwinding. We've been winding and winding forever, and now we just want to unwind and return home, you know, to our true home. And so it's not easy, but it does get better and better. I can definitely say that from my own experience. So thank you very much, Lenita, for sharing that. That's a really.
I just wanna say that because you said getting better and better. You know, I'm much better now. You know, after.
Yeah, so you've already realized a lot.
After a year and a half that I've been working on this, you know, and I'm a healer also.
Yeah.
Energy healer he's helping me. You know, we have sessions all the time, and we talk. And she works on me, and then I'm doing other things on my own also, you know.
Yeah.
To help me. So I'm getting better, you know. I feel like, you know, our baby steps, but are steps. That's what my healer said. When I say to her, I feel that I'm stuck. She said, no, you're not stuck. Every time we see each other, she said, no, you're not stuck. You are moving. You are moving, even though sometimes you think you are not, but you are. So I have a couple.
That's a really important point, because we don't want to rush ourselves one step at a time, and we have to be gentle with ourselves. And I just wanted to add that when this particular self-inquiry becomes automatic, you will notice when you get triggered in any situation, your mind will automatically go, is it true? And you'll be able to resolve it like internally. You don't have to do, you know, it just becomes really natural. And so it just takes practice, like anything that's worthwhile. So let's move on to the next sub-question. And I think we'll do, where and at what age did that thought first occur to you that they don't love me enough? Sometimes, and a lot of you have found it from a young age, but just notice maybe your earliest memory when you actually had that thought, they don't love me enough. And just notice. And if anybody finds an image that they'd like to share, that's great, and otherwise we'll move on in a minute.
When I was a young boy, I was in third grade, and my teacher used to beat me in the class, and used to beat other boys. And she was an older woman, like getting ready to retire, and so not many of the other teachers were doing this. But anyway, I would go home and tell my parents about it, and they didn't believe me. So it was pretty traumatic. And then years later, I became a teacher, and I would see third grade kids in the hall, and I would just think, look at these little kids.
Yes.
So I mean, I've processed it over the years.
Yeah.
And I have forgiven her, I feel, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And since the image arose, it's probably worth just noticing, what was that teacher thinking and believing? What was her suffering? Just so you can get to the place where you can completely release it, because she's obviously in deep suffering to be treating her students like that. And of course, today that would be she would be thrown out.
Yeah, there was actually a kid in the class. We just moved to the area. It was a beautiful area, and it was a nice school. And the boy next to me had a bad scar that went like this. And he had been left back in the class, and she had taken a ruler and hit him across the face and cut him very badly. But he was like a problem kid, and his mother liked the teacher. And probably she used to, when I'm 63, so I'm old enough that, it was pretty common that parents would beat their kids. My parents didn't, or they would spank them. I didn't even get spanked really. Um, yeah. So anyway, it was pretty traumatic, man.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, so you're again, yeah.
So
You're saying you're getting to the place of releasing it, really fully releasing it.
yes, and as horrendous as it is, if we really want to be free, somewhere in our being we have to forgive that, and that doesn't mean we condone the behavior. You know, I mean, like if something like that happened today, you can take action without being angry. You know, I think.
I know I got no money for it.
Violence of the brave. What? What?
I said I got no money for it. It's really a shame.
Well, anyway,
But yeah.
there is a place to defend, you know, the weak and downtrodden, and you know, it's a strange thing, but Katie says, until you can love Hitler, your work's not done. And that doesn't mean you condone their behavior. It doesn't mean that you don't, you know, put them in jail. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means you cannot have hatred in your heart. You have to love, because Baba says he's in everyone and everything. And I mean, that's, the mind can't go there because the mind is dual. But our work as Baba lovers is to really move towards more non-duality. My grandmother told me a story of when she was growing up. The teacher hit the child and that child actually died.
Wow.
Yeah, and nothing happened to the teacher. So, you know, these worldly injustices, they have been going on for millennia, and they probably will continue because this is the dual realm. This is the realm that we're in as we evolve out of the animal kingdom and beyond. And we just, you know, we have to just keep working on ourselves. So let's look back at the sub questions for question 3. And this is a pretty obvious one, but it's always worth mentioning. Whose business are you in when you're believing the thought, they don't love me enough? Whose business are we in? Do you remember the 3
I
kinds
don't
of...
understand this question.
Well, it's because we did a session on the 3 kinds of business, and you don't need to put it up, Diantha, but there's my business, there's your business, and there's God's business. And in the work, we say that every time you go out of your own business, you suffer. So when we go into other people's business, we suffer. And we do it all the time, but it is a cause of suffering. And Baba says our only business is to love him. So that's what our business is. And of course, as children, you know, of course we're believing they don't love me enough. I mean, I was believing it last winter, you know, that my husband didn't love me enough. I mean, this Maya this is how we realize God. We have to get through this. We have to deal with our stuff, and we're all in it. And so just notice you're in their business when you're believing they don't love you enough. So now we're going to go back and I'm going to ask you, how do you treat them when you're believing the thought that they don't love you enough? Take a minute and be very still and just notice. It's not an easy question to find the answer to. How do you treat them, even if only in your mind, when you're believing the thought, they don't love me enough? Just ponder that, and then after a moment, just share what you find, if you would like.
Well, for me, with my father, I talk back to him. And
Say that again. What happened?
I would talk back to him.
Okay. So you talk back to him.
He didn't like it. He was in the military, and he wanted people to respect him and obey him. He was strict. And he got somebody who was the polar opposite of him.
Yes. And today we know that a lot of military, people who have been in the military actually have PTSD, but it was probably undiagnosed in those days.
Yeah.
And that's another opening to just have compassion. So Tina noticed that she treated her dad by talking back to him. Okay. Who else notices, how do you treat that person when you're believing the thought, they don't love me enough? I noticed with my husband when I was believing the thought, I think I was just kind of, how can I describe it? I think I was just walking around, just being kind of moody towards him, not interacting with him so much because I was believing that he didn't love me enough. Anybody else notice how you treat that person?
Yeah, that's for me the same thing, and impatient really in my own mind, not letting it be a happy, not finding the happiness in the situation, just
Yes.
looking at negative things and
Yes.
overemphasizing them in my own mind.
And that's how the mind works. It's that interpreter in the left hemisphere of the brain. It just keeps spinning its negative story. And this happens to all of us. And I've said this before, it's because it's a familiar story and it gives us some perverse sense of security to just have our story, even if it's negative. And so that's why we really have to learn to disidentify from our thoughts and look at them much more from the witness mode, because otherwise they run our lives and make us miserable. Does anybody else have something they'd like to share about how they treat that person when they're believing?
I leave or I shut down.
Okay.
And let them, don't communicate.
Yes. Don't.
Or I
Yes,
get angry. I get not nice too.
Yes. Yeah.
I would do anything to get their love. I would do anything to make them love me, even turning to somebody else.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That is
a person that you want me to be.
Yes.
Even if it was not me, but they want me to be like that.
You would do
stupid,
anything.
Ignorant or whatever it was. In my house, it was more like a stupid, not very intelligent, because they didn't believe I was intelligent enough. So I would turn into a stupid girl, to make them happy.
The things we do for love, right? I mean, we've all done things we regret, I'm sure. So now the question is, and this one's even harder in my experience to answer. How do you, and you had just answered it, Lenita, but everybody else, how do you treat yourself when you're believing the thought, they don't love me enough? I mean, Lenita, you basically said, I give myself up. I leave myself, So everybody notice when you're believing the thought, they don't love me enough. How do you treat yourself?
Not well. It's like believing that I'm not worthy of love.
Yes.
I mean, it's really like a core belief. Like when I was a child, oh honey, I don't know what's wrong with you. I believed that God didn't like me or love me, and I didn't think anybody else did either.
Well, isn't that beautiful that Baba came and got you?
He did come and get me. He saved me, literally.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, he literally saved me.
Yeah.
Because,
and I can totally relate. It's a universal belief that we work on a lot in the work, that I'm unworthy. I mean, that was a big one for me. I'm unworthy. And we can find all kinds of reasons why we're unworthy. And it can be really helpful to make a list of all the things that you're worthy. But the truth is we're worthy just because we exist. We're God's creation. And there's no other reason that we need to know that we are loved and we are love, because God put that spark of love in us, and that's our true self. So does anybody else want to share?
it's hard to feel that sometimes. So, and
It's very hard.
yeah. Sometimes what I do is comfort myself, like with food that I know I shouldn't or don't really want to eat.
Oh, I know all about that.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes that's what we need to do. And we can also add to our list of things we do to just take time to feel the pain and to nurture ourselves just with attention. And I'm not saying there's not a place for eating comfort food, because in my experience there is. But I also notice that I can sit much more peacefully with my uncomfortable feelings and just be with it, because I know that by putting my attention there, something releases, and it deepens my ability to love and have compassion for everyone. And it really helps us become more transparent. And our ego is going to always jump in there and go, who do you think you are? I think I told you, I got this strong inner critic saying, who do you think you are, when I had the idea to do this virtual inquiry circle. And then my answer was, I'm someone who's really been helped with this process, and I'd really like to share it, because I just want to give other people something that's helped me. And you can talk to your inner critic, and he or she will become an inner ally. So when you feel unworthy, just notice all the wonderful things about yourself. It's not a bad thing to notice all the loving things that you do and feel all day long. There's nothing wrong with knowing that you're worthy. And this is like such core work. I cannot even tell you. I do believe we all have a deep place in us that feels unworthy. And probably until we are one with God consciously, we'll have to deal with that. But you know what? We have Baba. So we're most fortunate. And then we just hang on.
For me, what happened that is very important in my case is that I became aware when I get attracted by people who treat me that way.
Yes.
So
yes.
That's the main thing for me, stop chasing or being or attract
right.
for, people who are,
yes.
who make me this pattern come back on me.
Yes. Yes.
Just
well,
really, if I'm aware, at least if I'm aware of this, I can stop,
Awareness is a huge step. When I was 30, I started studying Jungian psychology because I was attracting the wrong kind of men. And I really wanted to figure out what was going on. And I did a lot of deep Jungian work for some years, and it really paid off. I've been, married to my husband for many years, and he is just a kind, patient, loving man. And, it's like you get to the place where it's enough to have this someone you can just walk through life with, if you're meant to. It's not for everyone, but we have to do this work on what are we projecting onto, especially a romantic partner, that we can't see in ourselves. We have to know that we have a shadow. And if we're not acknowledging our shadow, then we're definitely going to project and be attracted to the shadow of another. So I'm looking at the time, and I want to finish this particular statement today. So we're going to move on to the last sub-question, which is a nice segue into question 4. What do you fail to see when you're believing the thought that they don't love me enough? What do you fail to see when you're believing that thought? Tina?
Well, a lot of my fights with my father were over, I didn't like what we were having for dinner, and I refused to eat it. And that enraged him because he worked hard to put food on the table. And,
oh, wow.
And
you failed to see that he worked hard to put
yeah.
food on the table. I mean, doesn't that just kind of melt your heart? When we can see, even with these people who hit us and bully us and all these horrible things, when we can see those other aspects of their being, it just softens everything. We have much more empathy and compassion. Would anybody else like to share what they fail to see before we go on to question 4 and the turnarounds?
No, I don't fail to see my mother, but and what she and how she did love me, her way.
Yeah.
But I got to that in my 30s probably. But at the same time, it's like I still have trouble knowing how to nurture myself.
Yeah.
And not feel guilty about just about everything if I enjoy something. You know,
Okay.
it's like,
Yeah.
hmm.
Well, you know, one of the things that helps me is Baba says he likes to enjoy doing things with us. And sometimes when I'm enjoying something, I really feel his presence very strongly. I mean, I've even been known to, like, you know, offer him my coffee, or,
Yeah,
you know what
I do that too.
It's
Yeah,
like just, yeah. And so that's one way to heal that feeling that you can't enjoy. Just do it with Baba.
yeah, I do that too.
Good.
Yeah,
Good. And, you know, we're going to keep working away at this. And I don't think anything of value happens like instantly. I think we're meant to really just work and be patient. You know, Baba, he talks about it. When we're resigned to his will, that's what makes him happy. We are supposed to be patient and just work. We just go along in our ordinary life, and we are resigned to his will. And so we just keep working at not feeling guilty about enjoying. I mean, it's in my experience, it's really important to enjoy. It makes my heart open. It makes me love Baba more. You know, think about, and just, you know, just consider it, Paula. Even the fact that you're noticing this is going to just support you in being able to allow yourself to enjoy. And just, you know, be patient. So we're going to move on to question 4 now. Who would you be without the thought that they don't love me enough? Nothing has changed in the outer circumstance. The situation is the same, but you're just not thinking the thought that they don't love me enough. Who would you be without that thought? And
you know, I would be in my own business.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're in our own business without that thought. We're maybe taking care of ourselves. Oh, maybe we're going to give ourselves a little love. You know?
Yeah.
What could I do for myself right now? You know, one of the stories I love about, you know, that Katie tells was, you know, she said, if somebody, you want flowers and somebody won't get them for you, go get some for yourself. And I've done that. It's like, I don't have to have somebody give them to me. I can just give them to myself. Yeah. And that's true in so many things. Because in one level, we become really impersonal, even about our own embodiment. When we get more in the witness mode, we can see a bigger picture, and we can see ourselves as an actor on the stage of life. And why wouldn't we give to that person whose body we inhabit what we would give to another? So anybody else, who are you without the thought that they don't love me enough? Tina?
In my family, I was known as the problem child, the troublemaker.
Yeah.
My parents were conservative Republicans, and I was like a hippie radical. So it was not a good match. Baba said he ran out of good matches and after the war. And he just had to like put you with anybody. So,
I heard that. Oh, that's too funny. Well, yeah. I was the black sheep of my family, but you know, in this Sufi guy, he talks about the black sheep, the problem child. He says there's always someone who carries the shadow for the family. So, you know, we're probably the ones that Baba scooped up because we're carrying the shadow for our family. All the things that they're not willing, you know how if somebody just lives a life and it's kind of flat, like they're good people, but boring, and it's just all on the purpose. That's because the shadow is so repressed. When you start integrating your shadow, you know, you're not going to just be a boring person.
Yeah. Well, I think like it was
So
just
welcome to the problem child club. I was one of those too.
yeah. So without the thought, I think I would, you know, like Baba was like reparenting me, and
Wow.
see,
I love that.
you don't have to.
So without the thought,
yeah, I just wouldn't be the problem child. I would just be.
well, you know, one of the thoughts I have with my parents, and I did not have a bad childhood, I have to say. My dad had a temper, but that because I was so independent, I feel like I wasn't tied into the family dynamic so much. And I feel like that was, I might not have come to Baba otherwise, you know? It's like when I'm not so tied to doing everything I'm supposed to do and being the way everybody expected me to be. Because I was one of those hippies too.
Yeah.
And boy, they were upset.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot. And you know, I just think when your intention, I was always looking for God, just in the wrong places a few times.
Yeah.
I think when your motive is pure, it all comes out in the wash, right? Okay, so we're gonna move on to the turnarounds. So Diantha, if you could post those turnarounds for They Don't Love Me Enough. I'm hoping we don't have much time, but let's see if we can find a few examples for each one. So this is the turnarounds for the work, They Don't Love Me Enough. So we find 3 genuine specific examples for each of the turnarounds below that could be as true or truer than your original statement, which is they don't love me enough. So turned around to yourself, I want you to find an example where in that situation, I don't love me enough. And you can just shout out your example if you find one. Okay, I can tell you in my situation with my husband, I wasn't loving me enough to actually make my plans to just go to Myrtle Beach. I was going to go there for a few months and just, you know, it was a way for me to, because I love my husband and I wasn't going to leave him, but I went to Myrtle Beach and it was wonderful. And now I'm really happy to be home, but I wasn't loving me enough when I was believing the thought that he didn't love me enough to move to Myrtle Beach. So I was giving all my power away. So anybody else, can you find an example where you weren't loving yourself enough?
Oh yeah, me too. I give it my power. I give it my happiness.
You gave your happiness
to fulfill for me, you know.
Yeah.
Like I believe it that
so I don't love me enough to give
I
myself
won't be
happiness.
happy, you know. That I give my power for my happiness, the power of my happiness in somebody else's hands, you know.
Okay, great.
You
Great
know what I mean? So that's
Does
not good.
anybody else have an example before we go on to the next turnaround? I don't love me enough. And the thing is that's really good here is to find some positive examples, because then that's your prescription for happiness. So for example, like with you, Paula, when you're, I'm trying to think of your exact words. You felt unworthy, right?
I felt invisible.
Yes. So what you could have for an example, I don't love me enough, is you can find ways to love yourself more. So I don't love me enough, and I'm going to find a way to love me more. So one way you can love yourself more is to really make a point to enjoy some special treat, whatever that is that makes you happy. So it could be an example of, and I don't love me enough when I'm believing they don't love me enough, and I'm going to remember to give myself some special occasion. So this is where you find your prescription for happiness. Mm-hmm. And then you could also say, I don't love me enough when I feel unworthy to enjoy, let's say, a special treat. So then you know, you have to do that for yourself. You have to give yourself a special treat very consciously because you need to love yourself more. Is that clear?
Well, I do it. Yeah, I do it, but I do it kind of on the sly. Like, Baba, okay, I really want to watch this show. Will you watch it with me?
Yes.
Make it,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And there are some big things I've done in my life that were really, really hard, and it was about loving me enough. It was really hard decisions that I made. One was recent, and I did it anyway, and it was good for me, and it was good for everybody else, but it's still hard.
Yeah. Well, you know how you said you can't, even though you invite Bobby, you're not fully enjoying the show?
Well, yeah, it's that little Catholic girl that, was
Yes.
going to die and go to hell forever and didn't want to do that. I really wanted Jesus.
Well, you know what? You got Jesus, so yay.
Yeah, I
And
know.
there is no heaven or hell. It's all happening right now. So let's create a little heaven. So your homework, Paula, okay? This is your homework. If you like bubble baths, like me, you've got to have a nice bubble bath. Then you have to go fix yourself a special treat. And then you have to go watch the program you really love. And you invite Baba and you talk to him. And you just work at relaxing and enjoying, because honestly, it's just going to open something up for you that Baba wants. He wants all of us to enjoy your love even more. And when you can love yourself, you're able to love all of us more. So, okay. I mean, I'm being slightly facetious, but honestly, I do give homework to my clients.
Oh, no, I got it.
You got it? Your duty is to have fun. All right? It just, and it helps Baba in his work. He wants us to be cheerful. Even if we're not feeling it, he wants us to look cheerful. But I mean, we're asking you to be really cheerful. Like, just have a good time. Maybe make a bouquet of your favorite flowers. Fragrance is a powerful way to feel good.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes I get stuck in my head, and then I go out to my garden and I get busy weeding, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best therapy in the universe. Just being in my garden. All right.
For me, it was to go to India in December. That is the treat, because I got so much love from Baba. Baba kept my heart open, and I was like sobbing the entire month that I was there. I felt the sweetness and the love of Baba so much that that did it for me. I didn't even have to give me flowers. Baba gave me all the flowers.
That's really loving yourself. That's beautiful. So everybody has to find what works for them, okay? It's really important. It's different for everyone. How can you love yourself? So now we're going to do the turnaround to the other. I don't love them enough. So in this situation, find an example. Now, for instance, Tina already gave an example that she noticed. What she failed to see was that her father worked so hard to put food on the table. So that would be an example for Tina. I wasn't loving my dad enough when I forgot how hard he worked to get this food on the table. So everybody find a specific, authentic example of where I don't love them enough. And believe me, this is not easy, but this is the neuroscience where you're developing neural pathways into the right hemisphere of your brain to see a bigger picture of life. Where am I not loving them enough?
No, Oswald, no.
I mean, I wasn't loving my husband enough because I was forgetting how he is doing things for me all the time. He's always considerate. He's always kind. He just doesn't happen to like hot weather. He loves where we live, and he's not a Baba lover. So of course he didn't want to move to Myrtle Beach. I wasn't loving him enough when I didn't recognize that. Anybody else have something they can share? I don't love them enough.
Well, what happened is that last August, my mother passed away, and she was the main source of my unhappiness in this term of, this sense of making me feel abandoned,
Yes.
So when she was dying already, I had opportunity to be with her for 2 months.
Yes.
Maybe before she passed away. I mean, maybe a half a year before.
Beautiful.
And was so beautiful, you know, to be with her. She wants me to take a nap next to her in her bed. She would touch my face, something that she never did. My mother is the kind of person, she never said, I'm sorry. She never said, I love you.
Yeah.
Everything I did was not good enough.
Yeah.
And now she turned into this mellow that she would touch my face. She would say, I love you. We'd sleep together for naps in the afternoon. You know, I would bring her cakes and cookies, and she would appreciate that. So I had that, you know, turn around thing with her, you know, that was very sweet.
Yes.
And then I guess I forgave her because she asked me for forgiveness.
Yeah.
After she passed away, she asked me.
And it's always true. There's always a reason. There's always a reason why someone can't give us the love that we think we need from them.
Yeah.
There's always a reason, and we can give more love to ourselves. And of course, we have Baba, so, you know, he loves us more than we will ever know. So we need to quickly go to the turnaround to the opposite. They do love me enough. And Lenita was just sharing many, many examples of how her mom was able to love her enough at the end. But can somebody else share an example of, in your situation, Tina, they do love you enough?
Well, I think my father was loving me in his way by earning a lot of money, but it wasn't the way I wanted him to love me. He never said it, but him loving me was putting food on the table.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay.
You know, something a really good psychologist, he was wonderful, said to me once was, you know, it wasn't my fault, and it wasn't my mother's fault. It was no one's fault. My mom just didn't have what I needed. She didn't have it, so she couldn't give me what she didn't have.
Right.
And she did give me everything that she did have, she did give.
Yes.
She gave incredible things. The way she took care of us, it was against her nature to be a mother, I think. She needed to be a classical pianist, she needed to be a scientist, and she was, you know, there's a lot to her life that I understand. And because I understand it, it's like, so kind of what I was doing was I already got there. I already had the turnaround. I've had it for a long time, but it was like trying to sit with the way I felt in it as a child and honor that and then let that go. That's the hard part, to let it go and not let it poison, you know, be toxic in my life now.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to do. But it wasn't her fault, you know, and it wasn't my fault.
Yes.
It was, you know, and it's personalities.
Thank you. That is such a wise and nuanced expression. And I can find that with my mother too. You know, our parents, they're just these human beings, and some of us have to have children, and, you know, we just do the best we can, and you know, our children always pretty much think, you know, that we didn't do the best job, but it's just the way it is.
Even Bala said that about Shireen.
Yeah.
His own mother.
Like to
if Gulma had only been my mother. If Gulma had only been my mother. I thought, oh God, Baba, even you.
Isn't it something? Well, and I just look at it in terms of karmic. He talks about these karmic groupings that we re-embody in our families a lot. And I've really worked hard, you know, like with this one sister I have who irritates me, and I have been able to find all these absolutely lovely things about her, and she still irritates me. But you know, I don't argue with her. I just try to stick to the positive. Anyway, because it's 3 o'clock, I'm going to read, because if somebody needs to leave, I just want to read our closing quote, and then, you know, we can stay and chat for a few minutes afterwards once Diantha stops recording. So today I'm going to read to you from Glimpses of the God-Man by Bal Natu. And this is it's entitled, What Else Would There Be to Know? And this is a quote of Baba. Baba says, mind changes according to the samskaras, impressions, but it is not basically transformed. Mind is of the false and it remains false. Being false, it can be annihilated. Today you think I am a man. If your body falls and you get the body of a woman, you will think I am a woman. This I of being a man or woman is false, and it continues to think so till there is real transformation. Mind is never transformed. Ego is transformed only once. Ego is of the real, and it shall ever remain real. By ego, I mean your very being, with a capital B, as astitva. Ego by itself is not false. Mind makes one think so. Mind creates worlds, delusions, and illusions, yet it is never one in itself. Ego, as witness consciousness, is always one in itself. The real ego that each of us has is apparently bound up by the mind and makes the real ego think of itself as false. Mind makes you think birth and death, happiness and misery are real, and nothing can be more false than this. You are never born, but mind gives the impression, I am this, I am that, this is my wife, this is my child, etc. Mind always keeps you in a tap dance. If you know that you and your wife and your children are all one, and that you never die. And that was from page 339 in volume 2 of Glimpses of the God-Man. So it's not a bad idea to discipline our mind, is it?
You know,
Go ahead. Oh, you're freezing, Paula.
I have to get going. Thank you so much. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba,
It was
it's
awesome.
you, Cliff.